Once there was a farmer named Rafiq. He used to be very rich and owned a big farm. But he did not take care of his money or land wisely. He spent too much and didn't think about the future. By the time Rafiq realized his mistakes, it was too late. He had lost everything. Now, Rafiq and his wife Amina were very poor. They lived in a small, broken house. The walls had big cracks, and the roof had holes. Cold wind came through the cracks, and when it rained, water poured inside. It was hard to stay warm. Life had become a daily struggle. For many years, Rafiq and Amina had prayed to God for a child. But during the time they were rich, their prayers were never answered. Now, when they had nothing left, no money, no comfort, no hope, God finally blessed them with a baby girl. Amina held the baby in her arms and cried, "Oh Rafiq, what are we going to do? We don't even have food for ourselves. How can we take care of this poor little baby?" Rafiq gently took her hand and said, "Don't worry, Amina. She is a gift from God, and God will help us. We'll find a way. But first, we must have her christened. She needs a godmother." They had no family nearby, so Rafiq decided to go to their neighbor's wife and ask, but the neighbor's wife said coldly, "My husband and I are poor peasants, just like you. Why should we take on more problems and become godparents to your child?" Rafiq felt embarrassed and returned home with the bad news. "What did I expect?" said Amina sadly. "When we were rich, everyone wanted to know us. They all smiled at us. Even the mayor invited us to his home. But now that we are poor, not even a poor woman wants to help us." She looked down at her newborn baby girl, wrapped only in old pieces of cloth, and tears filled her eyes. Winter was nearly over, but the nights were still freezing. Every morning, the trees and houses were covered in snow. The ground was hard and cold, and that was all they had for the baby to sleep on. Amina kissed the baby's forehead and whispered, "My poor little darling. My sweet little girl." Then suddenly, a thought came to her, a small light of hope. "Rafiq," she said. "Go to the mayor's wife. Ask her to be our baby's godmother. I was godmother to her child, surely, she will do the same for us." Rafiq looked unsure. "I don't think she'll say yes," he said softly. "Please try," Amina begged. So with a heavy heart, Rafiq walked through the cold. He passed the fields and buildings that once belonged to him. His steps were slow and tired. Finally, he reached the mayor's house. He gave the mayor's wife his wife's greetings and politely asked if she would be godmother to their baby. The mayor's wife looked surprised and said, "You know how hard things are right now. Everyone is struggling. I can't afford to help someone as poor as you. Why are you even asking me? Don't you have anyone else?" Rafiq replied quietly, "My wife is the godmother of your child." "Oh, I see," she said with anger. "So this is just a favor you want in return? Is that the only reason your wife agreed to be our child's godmother, so we would owe you something?" She stood up and shouted, "And tell me, what help is your wife to our child now? You both have nothing. How dare you come here and insult me in my own home? I wouldn't be godmother to your baby even if you gave me gold." Rafiq's eyes filled with tears. Without another word, he turned and walked back home. When he arrived, Amina saw the pain in his face. He told her everything that had happened. Amina felt heartbroken and hopeless. But Rafiq held her hand and said gently, "Don't lose hope. We still have our little girl. And somehow, we'll make it through." The next day, Rafiq decided to take their baby girl to be christened. He had no one left to ask, so he said, "I will go alone and ask the very first person I meet on the road to be her godmother." Amina wrapped their baby in an old blanket to protect her from the cold winter wind. Tears ran down her cheeks as she handed the baby to Rafiq. Rafiq dressed in the warmest clothes he had and started walking. He carried his baby close to his chest, sad, but proud. After walking for several hours, he saw an old woman coming slowly down the road. She wore torn, dirty clothes and leaned on a stick. Her back was bent, and her steps were slow. Rafik hesitated. Could he really ask this poor old woman? But something in her face made him feel calm. He walked up to her, explained everything, and asked, "Would you be godmother to my daughter?" The old woman smiled gently, her eyes warm and kind. She took the baby softly in her arms and said, "Yes, of course I will. It would be an honor to be the godmother of such a sweet little girl, especially a child whose father loves her so much." Together, they walked to the church. As they arrived, the priest was just about to leave. His assistant rushed up and whispered something in his ear. "Oh no," said the priest. "Who is it now? I want to go home and eat my supper." "It's only Rafik," whispered the assistant. "You know, the one who lost everything. He's as poor as any peasant now." The godmother noticed the assistant's unkind whispering. Quietly, she pulled a shiny gold ducat from her torn dress and placed it in the priest's hand. The priest looked at the coin, then at the old woman in shock. He quickly turned to his assistant and said, "Prepare the church. We will have the christening now." The christening that followed was grand, just like one for a rich merchant's child. The baby girl was given the name Mariska. After the ceremony, the priest walked them to the church door, smiling warmly. The assistant walked with them all the way to the gate, hoping for another reward. The old woman didn't disappoint. She gave him a golden ducat too. He bowed deeply, overjoyed. When Rafik and the godmother reached the place where they had first met, she gently handed Mariska back to him. Then, she took another gold ducat from her pocket and slipped it into the baby's blanket. She smiled and said softly, "This is my gift to your child. This will be enough to raise her well and give her everything she needs. She will bring joy and comfort to you and your wife. When she grows up, she will have a long and happy life." Then, the kind godmother touched the ground. Suddenly, a beautiful rose bush grew up out of the earth, covered in sweet-smelling flowers. Rafik bent down to admire the flowers. Then turned to thank the old woman, but she was gone. He looked around, confused and amazed. "Goodbye." "Thank you, kind godmother." He called out into the wind. He stood there holding baby Mariska, unsure of what to think. He might have stayed there for hours if Mariska hadn't started crying for milk, so he began walking again, but now with hope in his heart. As he walked, he reached into the blanket to make sure the gold coin was still there, to check if he hadn't just dreamed it, but as he pulled the ducat out, it turned into 10 ducats and slipped from his hands, falling all over the ground. Rafik stood in silence, completely shocked. Then he laughed with joy, picked them up, and ran home, holding little Mariska tightly. At home, Amina was waiting, cold, hungry, and worried. There was no food, and she feared something had gone wrong. Suddenly, Rafik burst through the door with a big smile. He told her everything, the kind godmother, the golden coins, and the rose bush. "Take the godmother's gift from Mariska's blanket," he said excitedly. Amina reached into the blanket and pulled out the golden ducat. Suddenly, there were 10, 20, 30 ducats. She gasped and cried out in joy. The coins spilled all over the floor like magic. They both started picking them up, and with every coin they touched, 10 more appeared. Soon, there was a huge, shining golden pile in the middle of the floor. They fell to the ground laughing and crying at the same time, but then, Amina's face turned pale. She looked frightened. "Rafik," she whispered, "what if this is not a blessing? What if it's a curse? What if the old woman was a spirit trying to buy our souls?" Rafik laughed gently when his wife, Amina, said the gold might be a curse. "Don't be silly," he said kindly. "What kind of evil spirit would go into a church? I don't think she was an ordinary woman. Maybe she was a good spirit, sent by God to help us." But even though Rafiq felt hope in his heart, he knew they had to be careful. We must keep this a secret, he warned Amina. Hide the money. Don't tell anyone the real story. Then Rafiq took just 1 ducat and said, I'll go to the mayor to exchange this. I'll bring back food, eggs, flour, bread, and milk. What else should I buy? He asked with a smile. Amina didn't even stop to think. Our land, our house, our animals, and our fields, she said softly. Tomorrow morning, Rafiq replied with joy in his eyes, but then Amina became serious. She looked him in the eyes and said, Rafiq, please take care of everything better this time. Rafiq held her close and whispered, I promise. I'll do this for you. And for Mariska. I was foolish before. I caused us pain and sadness. But I've learned my lesson. Please believe me. Then he left to buy their supplies. While Rafiq was away, Amina sat by the fire, holding little Mariska in her arms. She smiled as she dreamed of a better future, a warm home, a full kitchen, a happy life. Soon, Rafiq returned, and he wasn't alone. With him came the mayor's servant, carrying buckets of fresh milk, a basket of eggs, and even some delicious cakes. The mayor's wife sends her greetings, the servant said kindly. She asked me to help you however I can. Amina thanked her with a warm smile. The servant began preparing a rich, warm soup over the fire. Rafiq also brought home 3 soft feather beds, which he placed near the fire to warm them. The next day, Rafiq went out early to buy back their farm. Meanwhile, the mayor's wife, curious about how Rafiq and Amina had suddenly become wealthy, came to visit. She asked many questions, but Amina smiled politely and said very little. Mariska's godmother gave us a kind gift, she said, just enough to help us start again. She kept their secret safe, after the mayor's wife left. Amina sat quietly by the fire. Her heart was full of gratitude. She whispered a prayer, thanking the kind godmother who had changed their lives. Rafiq bought back their land, fields, animals, and home. This time, he managed everything wisely. He built strong, beautiful farm buildings and a warm, lovely house for his family. He bought the best animals and worked hard. When autumn came, the fields were golden with wheat and corn. Rafiq's farm became the most successful in the whole region. He and Amina became known as kind, generous neighbors. They never forgot what it felt like to be poor, and always helped any farmer who was struggling. Mariska grew into a loving and joyful child. Just as the godmother had said, when she became a young woman, her beauty and kindness caught the eye of a wealthy prince, who asked her to marry him. She agreed, and they had a long, happy life together. As for Rafiq and Amina, they grew old together in peace and good health. On quiet evenings, they would sit by the fire, side by side, and talk about the day the kind godmother appeared, the day that changed everything.